Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Make It, Own It, Work It. Today we'll be making a DIY mug cozy. So what that is just a little felt piece of fabric that hugs around your mug. Whether you're drinking coffee, tea, or cocoa, it'll keep your drink warm and your hands from getting burnt. I have delicate baby hands that like to get burned on cups of tea. So what we're going to start with is 2 pieces of felt. This is the size I have for my teacup. I've got 2 pieces here of the same size. So I'm just going to line them up so that they are sitting pretty much exactly at the same spot. If you have a favorite mug, you may want to measure it, like see how big it is around and how tall, because ideally what we would like is for this cozy to slip between the handle and the mug. So I'm going to pick up a mug here to give you an example. So it will go through here and around the mug. So if you have a particular mug that you are really into, maybe give that a measure so you can get the right size pieces of felt. So what I've done, now that they're lined up, is I've drawn a little tab, if you will. This is the part that'll go around inside of the handle of the mug. It's just a little bit more slender so you have a spot with which it can pass through easily. Not trying to jam fabric through that small area. So first thing I'm going to do is pin it into place. I think Giselle has the pins. Ooh, go grab them. Sorry about it. This is live, so it gets exciting on this end. I'm just going to pin these 2 pieces of fabric together so that they don't move. Because ideally what we would like is 2 identical pieces that we will later sew together. So if you've been watching our previous Make It, Own It, Work It, we've been doing hand stitching, and this is kind of our biggest project we have thus far as both skill and just a little bit more time. But it's super worth it. It makes something really cozy for your fall and winter cups of hot drink. All right, I've pinned this so it's not going to move. And all I'm going to do is cut along this line so I get kind of a rounded little tab. Pretty straightforward. Even I can figure this part out. And I'm not particularly crafty. Although this has been fun to give me some crafting skills, I gotta admit, Giselle's mostly the mastermind behind everything we do because she is actually quite crafty. Alright, so I'm cutting around.
Julie's downplaying her skills, she's so great.
She's teaching me and I'm enjoying it. It's a good dynamic. Alright, here we go. Alright, I successfully have a tab. So here I will keep my pins in place, and this is where we would start stitching. And I'm going to turn it over to Giselle so she can show you exactly what that looks like. Hold on just a hot second. Turn, 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 turn.
Hi, this is Giselle. So I want to show you the stitching part of it. So you can see that I already started because last week when we did stitching, that was just a lot of sort of dead time while you were quietly watching me stitch. You can see I still have a pin in here. I had it pinned all the way around, but as I sewed it up, I took the pins out. I did the back stitch because that is the most secure hand stitch that we've shown you. So you can see a little bit what the back looks like. Ignore the mess of it. And you can see what the front of it looks like. I am going to leave a space here unsewn so that we can flip this inside out. If you're new to sewing projects, typically everything is done inside out so that you can flip it out and then have a nice seam and you don't see a lot of the stitches. Just to go through, we're just going to do a couple more of the back stitches, which is going forward on the top and then coming back a little bit underneath. Going forward on the top coming back underneath. Those with really sharp eyes probably see that there's little gaps up here too. Those weren't intentional. Those were me not paying attention and missing stitches. So that's what that is. Just going to quickly do a couple more stitches until I'm about where I want to be for the opening. You want to give yourself a good few inches. I would say like 3 inches at least, to be able to do a really, to sort of just like make it easy on yourself. If you do something that's too narrow, it's going to be a lot more difficult for you to flip something inside out, especially something like this, because it's not very big. And felt can be really stiff, so it's not easy to flip inside out. And I actually have a tool to help me flip this inside out, which I will show you in just a moment. So that's about as much as I want to have free to flip. I can get my fingers in there, so that'll make it easier for me to pull the stuff through. So I'm gonna cut off my thread and tie that off so that that's secure. And cut off the excess. Before I flip it inside out, I'm actually going to go around and sort of cut off a lot of the excess around the... Actually, I need a bigger pair of scissors. Give me just a second. Live videos, aren't they fun? Woohoo! So I'm cutting off the excess, and that makes it easier for it to flip inside out. And it like reduces the bulk on the edges, so when we do the top stitching later, it's not going to be as difficult. So I'm just trimming up around the places where I wasn't completely uniform, trimming around the places that have a lot more excess. But we're not taking it directly to the stitch. You'll see that there's still room around the stitches, but there's a lot less bulk around them. Okay, so the tool that I have to help me flip this inside out is this. It is plastic, but it's called a bone folder because these sorts of devices used to be made out of bone. It's typically used to fold paper or to do like bookbinding stuff or book repair stuff, but it's also a good tool for something like this because you can use it to really straighten out the edges once you get this turned inside out. So I'm just going to start by opening up that hole, and I'm going to push the end through the hole so it comes out of there. Now, when it comes out, it's gonna look like a hot mess. Like, for real. Be prepared for that if you do this project, because it's not gonna look cute coming out of the gap that you've left.
I was personally very frustrated when I opened mine up. I was like, what happened? But the next step made it a lot nicer.
Yeah, because this is... You open this up and you lose this lovely shape that you worked so hard to get. You drew a pattern on and felt and everything, and then it comes out and you're like, this doesn't look anything like it. It's a floppy mess. And that's just the way it's supposed to look. It's how it's going to look for a minute before we get it all situated. All right. So just carefully working it all through to pull and flip it inside out. Now, see, this is a weird floppy mess. Like this, you're like, this isn't cute. I failed somewhere along the way. I promise you, you haven't failed. You're on the right track. So now we're going to use this bone folder though, and we're going to go along all of the edges and give them a push. Oh, look at that. Our nice little bottom corners are back.
Yay, we worked so hard to sew those.
Yes. So I'm just running the bone folder along the seams as I go, and it's straightening them out and pushing them out to where they need to be. This is the top of it. The part that curves in is where we're going to need to do probably a lot more work, because we want to make sure that we get that nice sort of shoulder shape. That's what it looks like to me, like a shoulder. So just sort of carefully pushing on all of those interior seams now. And you have your lovely shape back. It's not exactly the same, but we're gonna get there with our next set of stitching. So when we were talking about the hand stitches, we talked about the straight stitch and how it was used for top stitching. So I'm gonna show you what that looks like. That's not quite long enough for what I need, so I'm going to pull off some new thread and show you what the top stitching looks like. I'm not going to go all the way around because, again, I'm not going to make you sit through like the dead air of me quietly making stitches, but I will show you how to get started with the top stitching, and then I'm going to pass it over to Julie, who will show you what the next step is after you are done with your top stitching.
And with the pushing the fabric out from the other side, I didn't have a bone folder, so I took the end of a pencil, the eraser end, and just gently tapped along the inside till the edges pushed out to the shape that I wanted it in. So
yes,
you don't have to have super special equipment.
That's true. You can use pretty much anything to help you push it out, as long as it doesn't have a sharp edge. If it does have a sharp edge or a point, just be very, very careful. I made that mistake one time. My first project, I used scissors and I stabbed through the fabric and had to start over. So just be mindful of the tools that you are using. Something with a blunt edge is going to be best. So the reason why we're top stitching is, first of all, it looks super cute when it's done, but also we now have this big hole in the our project, and we want it to be closed and like sort of uniform with everything else. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the edges and I'm sort of tucking them in. I'm sort of mimicking the shape of the fabric that's currently inside of our project, but sort of doing it in a backwards way so that you have this nice little smooth lip. And then I'm going to pin that so that holds its shape while it's waiting for its turn to be sewn closed. So sometimes it takes a little bit of finessing, and that's okay. This is a project that probably is a good way to practice some of your patience. It's also a good way to practice your stitches. And it's pretty safe to do it because you're not going to get a lot of these, the back stitch isn't going to be visible when you're done. So it's an easy way to practice it. See, and that's not quite what we're looking for, so I'm going to go back and tuck that again to make sure that it is sort of flat and lined up with everything else. And I'm actually going to pin it horizontally instead of vertically so that it holds its shape a little better. And it kind of looks like a wine bottle at this point. So I'm going to start at the bottom, and I'm just going to use the straight stitch, which is the basic stitch that just goes up and down through the fabric. The first stitch I've got, I'm going to do it in the same place a couple of times just to sort of lock the stitch in. Just make very small stitches there, just to sort of like give it a firm start. And then I'm going to, well, first I'm going to undo this knot that I made. on accident. There we go. Be mindful of, when you're sewing, also be mindful of the tail. You can trim it before you really get started. I always forget to trim it, and it gets caught sometimes. So you could be smart and avoid that and cut it off, or you could be like me and be stubborn and just go forward with it. So what you can do is you can slowly go down through the fabric, pull it taut, up through the fabric, pull it taut. But you can also just sort of bounce the needle through the fabric like this.
It's kind of bunched a little bit.
Yeah, it looks bunched, but the needle is through it. It's gone up and down a couple of times. And then you pull it through. And I almost did that without creating a knot. All right, and so that was a few stitches there. It's a little more difficult to see. You can only see a couple on the front, and you can see 3 on the back. So it's just bouncing the needle through. That's a quick way to do it. Or, like I said, you can do it a little more carefully and place your stitches by going down, pulling taut, going up, and pulling taut. So this will have sort of a consistent look all the way across. There'll be spaces through, but what the top stitching does, in addition to sealing this hole, is that it firmly flattens the edges. So you get something that's nice and flat and smooth all the way around. This is nice, but the edges they're thick. And so they don't sit flat and they don't sit very smoothly. So that's what the top stitching is going to do for you. You don't have to top stitch if you don't want. If you like the way it looks, smooth and neat, just the way it is, that's also fine. We never do crafts that are prescriptive. Like, if you want to deviate from what we've done, we encourage it. We want to see it. We want to hear about it. So I'm just going to do the same thing all the way around because I want to be consistent with the way that I am doing the top stitching. I want it to look as nice, not as nice, but as uniform as possible. Not that all of my stitches are the same length. You can see that because they're all different sizes, but I want it to all look like I've done the same thing throughout the whole thing. So I'm going to complete this using the same sort of bouncing through the fabric a few times and then pulling the thread taut that way. So I'm going to continue doing the top stitching, but we're going to turn it back to Julie, and she's going to show you how to put on the finishing touches, which is basically the closure. We have a couple of different options for the closure that she's going to show you, but she's going to show you how to close up your mug cozy and how to finish your little project. Thank you for tuning in with us.
All right, give me a moment while I flip this camera around. Dun 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 dun. Oh my gosh, where am I? All right. Thank you for your patience. So there are 2 options we have here. The first one I'm going to show you is closing it up with Velcro, and the second is with a button and cutting a slit in part of the cozy. So option number 1, Velcro. This is a good option for me personally because I don't have my favorite teacup around the house. I'll pretty much use whatever teacup is closest and use it as my victim for my hot drink. So what I'm going to do is I actually did try stitching this down with a whip stitch, and that would have worked great. But my coordination is not all that it should be, and I'm still learning to stitch, so it was a bit more of an adventure than I bargained for. So what I ended up doing was using hot glue on the back of part of my Velcro. and just sticking it down onto the felt. Hot glue sticks great to felt. And in fact, if you wanted to do this whole project with hot glue instead of stitching, I believe that is a possibility. If you try it, please let us know how it turns out, because we just went with the whole stitching. So I've got my little bottle shape like Giselle has. Here's another completed one with all of our top stitching. This is purple on black, which you can't actually see in this light. That's pretty invisible. So what I did was I took the scratchy part of the Velcro and I put it at the top of my bottle shape. So what's going to happen with this is the side that's going to wrap around on top of the mug. So what I want to do is make sure that I put the soft part of the Velcro opposite to where the scratchy part's going to land. So if this is coming over the top, oh, I see it folds right there. I'm going to want to attach the fuzzy part of the Velcro to where it's going to match. So what that's going to end up looking like is scratchy part on this side, soft part on that side. All right, wish me luck. I'm going to secure it with some hot glue. What that? If you're using hot glue, please, please, please be careful.
Yes.
The cozy's there to prevent burns, so don't get any burns making it. All right. Here we go. I put some hot glue on the back side of the Velcro. And I'm going to put it on the end of the cozy, so the bottom part of my bottle shape. And I'm just going to hold this down for a moment, just applying pressure to make sure it's actually going to stick. And amazing things of amazing things, I did not get glue all over myself. Huzzah! All right, kneading it like a little cat. And this is what it should look like at the end. So if I were to fold it, in theory, this will match up. Huzzah! They matched up. That's exciting. So this could go around a cup. I've got a demonstration cup here. Oof, why don't I just wrap it? What an idea. Okay, so this is great. The Velcro works great because it can actually fit whatever size cup. Yay.
Yay.
So that one turned out pretty successfully. That's exciting.
So even if you do have your favorite mug that you like to use all of the time, if that one's not available or if it's in the wash, your cozy will fit on other mugs if you're using the Velcro.
So the reason I put the scratchy part on the bottle, the top of the bottle here, the bottle shape that we keep referring to, is so that the scratchy part will be face down when you put it on your tea mug, because nobody wants scratchy stuff on their fingers when they're just trying to have a relaxing mug of hot drink. So this is nice and fuzzy. Just be aware that the scratchy part might be uncomfortable if you attach it to this fat part at the end of our bottle shape. Huzzah! Now I have a cozy for one of my mugs at home, or whichever mug I decide I want to use that day. So our secondary option is to sew a button on. So first of all, I want to decide which side of the cozy is my prettier side. So this is the side where you can see actually pretty well with this bright thread that I've got a few knots here, whereas they don't really show up on the other side. I'm going to call this one my pretty side because it doesn't have all the knots. So I want to make this the inside of my cozy. So on the pretty side of my already completed cozy, that's where I want to secure my button. Just like that. Just on the fat part there. So what I'm going to do, I've already got my needle threaded because I could not trust myself to do that live on camera because my fingers are fumbly. We saw that last time. My fingers are fumbly. So I put the needle through the back of both parts of the fabric. I'm just going to slip one hole of the button on there. Huzzah, huzzah. I'm going to pull the thread through. Oh, maybe I need a bigger knot. See, this is what I get for trying to be clever and doing it beforehand. Maybe my knot isn't the right size. But felt is also a little bit tricky. One knot that was big enough in one spot, oh, it caught in another spot. So it wasn't that my knot was too small, it's just that felt can be a little inconsistent. So I'm going to take my needle and put it through the second hole of the button here. And just gently pull through. I say gently, but what I mean is carefully, so as not to create a knot. I have definitely a problem with trying to pull thread too fast and then having it not turn out well. I get a rat's nest on either side of my sewing project and it gets very frustrating. So what I'm doing is just going back and forth, up through the first hole, down through the second hole. If I were to be using a button that had 4 holes, which I can show you in a second, like this one here, what I would do is I would go up through one selected hole. I don't know if you can see that in this light. Basically what I do is I go through, let's say, the right hole here, and then go down through the left hole. And I would do that a couple of times to secure those two across from each other. And then I would go through the bottom hole, through the back, and then up through the top hole on the front. I don't know if that makes sense. So you go around a couple times and then you go up and back a couple times. That's just to make it a little extra secure. So once you're done going through your buttonholes, I'm going to call that good. I went through like a few times. That's where you can secure the knot at the back, or what we call the side that wasn't so pretty. So my button's secured on the pretty side, going to be tied off on the not so pretty side. Alright, just going to tie that off real quick. And then with this, there's just one extra step besides the button at the end. And that is creating a slit for the button so that it can catch and hold your mug. This is a great option for a mug you know you're going to use every day. If you have a favorite mug, you can measure that one and make this cozy like the exact size to fit that. I know a lot of my friends have a mug companion that they use every morning or every evening. Ooh, need a pair of scissors. Thank you, Miss Giselle. All right, I tied off the knot in the back here. Excellent. Ta-da, ta-da. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut a hole at the top of my bottle. It kind of doesn't matter if you cut from the back or the front because it's going to end up in the same place. And with felt, it doesn't really fray that much, so you don't have to really, I mean, you can sew it closed if you want to, but it shouldn't fray and get too big. So I'm going to start, okay, going too fast. So what I did is I just took the top and I'm going to fold it over, and then I'm going to cut at this fold. So making sure not to cut any of your stitching, because then you'll just undo all the hard work you just did.
No.
Yeah, no, don't do that. So we're going to cut right in the middle here, just a little snip, and hopefully it should go through both sides. I've got a big pair of scissors here. That should do the trick. Eee. Oof. This belt is tough. That's a good sign. You want your tea cozy to be tough. Don't want it to fall apart. Oh my goodness gracious. Oh, I've actually got a cut going on here. So I have the tiniest bit of an opening here, and I'm just going to actually unfold it and take the scissors to just widen that hole a little bit. Not a whole lot, because you don't want your button to slip through. All right. Very little cuts. All right. Now I have a hole on that end. You can see that goes through both sides. I'm going to see if I cut the hole big enough to secure the button. You're just going to push the button through the slot, and oh my gosh, I'm so excited because it worked! Yay! And I think that's really cute. I kind of used an iridescent button on here with light green stitching on dark green fabric. And that's it. This should fit your favorite mug if we've measured correctly. Remember, measure twice, cut once. But that should fit. And from here, if you wanted to, you could I don't know if you know how to sew patterns on. You can sew patterns onto here. You could sew a patch, whatever you want, or you can just leave it plain. So in theory, you should be able to wash this, probably hand wash. Probably don't throw it in your washing machine. Don't throw it in the dryer. Felt does tend to shrink some. So that is the mug cozy. Whether you do Velcro or button, your tea, coffee, or cocoa is now ready to be enjoyed with soft felt on your hands. And that'll do it for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you try this, please let us know, like, share, and just enjoy your hot beverage. We'll see you next week.